Man is the creature who does not know what to desire. At first, that sounds ridiculous. Of course you know what you want. You know what kind of life you're trying to build. You know what you're working toward. You know what matters to you. Right? Maybe. But before you answer, think about something. Take the biggest goal in your life right now. The thing taking most of your attention, most of your effort, most of your mental space. Now go back. Not to the goal itself. Go back to the moment before you wanted it. The moment before it became important. The moment before it started occupying your mind. Who was there first? Most people never ask that question, because the answer is often uncomfortable. Maybe it was someone from school, someone whose life seemed to be moving faster than yours. Maybe it was a friend who got a promotion. Maybe it was a person online you've never met, someone whose life looked effortless, certain, admired. Maybe it was someone you don't even like, someone you've been quietly measuring yourself against for years. And then something happened. A goal appeared. A lifestyle appeared. A version of success appeared. And suddenly it felt important. It felt personal. It felt like yours. But what if that feeling is exactly what makes this so difficult to see? What if some of the things you call your desires were never entirely yours to begin with? What if the voice saying, "This is what I want," is not as independent as it feels? Because there is a question most people never seriously ask. Not, "What do I want?" but, "Where did the wanting come from?" And once you start asking that question, it becomes very difficult to look at your life the same way again. There is a strange pattern hiding in plain sight. Once you see it, you start seeing it everywhere. You don't want something, then you see someone else with it, and suddenly you do. A career, a body, a city, a relationship, a lifestyle, a reputation, a version of success. Sometimes the desire appears almost instantly, as if it had been sitting inside you all along, waiting to be discovered. But look closer, because often it wasn't there at all. Not a month ago, not a year ago, sometimes not even a week ago. Think about the apartment you dream of living in. When was the first time you imagined it? Where did that image come from? Who were you watching? Whose life made it seem desirable? Before that moment, did you actually want it? Or did it become attractive because it was already attractive to someone else? Think about a career goal, a title, a certain income, a version of success that now feels obvious. Was it obvious 10 years ago? Or did it become obvious after you met someone who had it? After you saw how people treated them? After you saw the admiration they received? The disturbing part is not that we're influenced by other people. Everyone knows that. The disturbing part is that these desires do not feel borrowed. They feel authentic. They feel personal. They feel like they came from inside us. That is exactly why they are so powerful, and exactly why they are so difficult to question. René Girard spent much of his life studying a strange question. Where does desire come from? Not need, desire. The things we become obsessed with, the things we organize our lives around. the things we believe will finally make us feel complete. Girard, a French philosopher and literary theorist, came to a conclusion that was deeply unsettling. We do not simply desire things, we learn desire from other people. He called this mimetic desire, from the Greek word mimesis, imitation. According to Girard, we don't just copy behavior, we copy wanting itself. We learn what is worth wanting by watching what other people want, not because we're weak, not because we're shallow, because this is how human beings orient themselves in the world. We look to others for signals, for direction, for meaning, for clues about what matters. And most of the time, we never notice we're doing it. The desire arrives, and we assume it belongs to us. But sometimes, it doesn't begin with us at all. Sometimes we catch it. The way you catch a mood from a room, or an accent from a place you've lived long enough. You don't choose as many of your desires as you think. You inherit them. You absorb them. You catch them. And that realization leads to an even stranger question. If your desires came from somewhere, who gave them to you? Take the biggest goal in your life right now. Not a small one, the big one. The thing you're building toward. The thing you keep telling yourself will matter. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. If one specific person had never existed in your life, would you still want it? Most people answer too quickly, because the question sounds simple. It isn't. There are people who haven't spoken to you in years, and they are still shaping your future. Not because they're controlling you, not because they're trying to influence you, but because somewhere along the way, they became a reference point, a standard, a measuring stick, and your mind never fully let them go. Girard had a name for this person, the mediator. The person whose desire teaches you what to desire. Sometimes the mediator is someone you admire, a mentor, a friend, a parent, someone successful, someone respected, someone whose life makes you think, I want what they have. But not always. Sometimes the mediator is someone you envy, someone who irritates you, someone you secretly compete with, someone whose achievements seem to follow you around, even when you pretend not to care. Think about how often a single person can change the direction of an entire life. A friend gets into a certain industry. Suddenly, you're interested in it too. A colleague buys a house. Suddenly, your apartment feels smaller. Someone your age gets married. Suddenly, time feels different. The same life you were satisfied with last month now feels behind. Nothing changed except your point of comparison. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. Social media has amplified this process to a level no previous generation has experienced. Every day, hundreds of lives pass in front of your eyes. Hundreds of desires. Hundreds of definitions of success. Hundreds of examples of who you could become. You're not just consuming content, you're consuming models, ambitions, aspirations, and you're consuming desire itself. And the frightening thing is that your mind often mistakes exposure for personal preference. The more often you see something desired, the more natural it starts to feel, the more inevitable it starts to feel, the more it starts to feel like your own idea. Follow almost any major desire in your life back to its beginning, and you will often discover something unsettling. Before it felt like your desire, it belonged to someone else. This is where things become harder. Because careers are one thing, status is one thing, relationships are different. At least that's what we like to believe. But Girard believed mimetic desire becomes even stronger in love. And once you see it, certain experiences start making uncomfortable sense. Have you ever wanted someone intensely, only to lose interest the moment they became fully available? Nothing changed. Same person, same personality, same face, same conversations. Yet somehow the feeling changed. Why? Or have you ever found someone more attractive after discovering that other people wanted them too? Not consciously, not deliberately, but the knowledge changed something. The fact that they were desired made them feel more desirable. Most people don't like admitting this, because it feels shallow. But that doesn't make it false. Human desire is often social before it is personal. Sometimes what attracts us is not only the person, it's the meaning attached to the person, the status, the validation, the sense of being chosen, the feeling that being wanted by them changes something about who we are. Think carefully about that, because these are not the same thing. Wanting a person is one experience. Wanting what that person does for your identity is another. And from the inside, they can feel almost identical. This doesn't mean your feelings aren't real. They are real. The attraction is real. The longing is real. The heartbreak is real. Girard's point was never that love is fake. His point was that desire is more complicated than we think, more social, more influenced, more interconnected. And that raises a difficult question, one that very few people ever ask themselves honestly. Why this person? Why this type of person? Why this pattern? Why this story? Because behind every desire, there is often another desire. And behind that desire, there is often another person. Someone who taught you, directly or indirectly, what was worth wanting. The question is not whether you truly love. The question is, who taught you what love should look like? And once that question enters the room, it becomes impossible to ignore. By now, a more uncomfortable possibility starts to appear. Not that some of your desires were influenced by other people, that's obvious. Not that social comparison exists, everyone knows that. The real question is much harder. What happens if a desire becomes strong enough to organize an entire life? Because once a desire takes hold, it doesn't stay in your mind. It starts making decisions. It influences what you work toward, what you sacrifice, who you become, what you ignore, what you consider success, what you consider failure. And if that desire was borrowed, what exactly are you building? Girard noticed something strange. As mimetic desire becomes stronger, the object itself often becomes less important. The rival becomes more important. At first, you think you're chasing a career. Then you realize you're chasing the person who already has it. At first, you think you're pursuing success. Then you realize you're pursuing a position relative to someone else. At first, you think you're trying to improve your life. Then you realize you've become obsessed with closing a gap. A gap between you and another person. A gap that never seems to stay closed. Think about how many victories only feel satisfying when somebody else sees them. How many achievements secretly contain an audience. How many goals lose their emotional charge the moment comparison disappears. A promotion feels incredible until someone else gets a bigger one. A new relationship feels meaningful until you compare it to someone else's. A milestone feels important until it becomes common. And suddenly, the feeling moves again. Always moving, always somewhere ahead, always attached to another person. This is the trap. Not because comparison is bad, because comparison has no finish line. There is always someone richer, someone younger, someone more attractive, someone more accomplished, someone living a version of life that appears more complete. And if your desire depends on them, your peace depends on them too. Which means your life is no longer organized around what matters to you. It's organized around distance. Distance from other people. Distance you spend years trying to reduce. Distance that keeps changing. Distance that never fully disappears. And one day, something strange can happen. You achieve what you spent years pursuing. You arrive at the place you thought would finally settle everything. And instead of feeling complete, you feel confused. Not because the achievement is meaningless, not because success is empty, because the desire was never really about the thing itself. It was about catching up. It was about proving something. It was about becoming someone in the eyes of another person. And when you finally get there, you discover the finish line belonged to someone else. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from this. Not physical exhaustion, not even emotional exhaustion. Existential exhaustion. The exhaustion of running for years without ever asking why you started running. And the frightening part is that you can spend an entire life doing it, without realizing it, without ever stopping long enough to ask, if nobody was watching, if nobody was ahead of me, if nobody could admire me, would I still want this? That question changes everything. Because for many people, it is the first truly independent question they have ever asked. If you followed this far, another question naturally appears. Maybe your goals were influenced. Maybe your standards were inherited. Maybe your desires were shaped by people you barely noticed. But then, where are you in all of this? Where does your life begin? Where does the influence end? Where is the line? The uncomfortable answer is that there isn't one, at least not a clean one. Human beings are social creatures. We learn through imitation. We always have, we always will. The goal is not to become completely free from influence. That isn't possible. The goal is to become conscious of it. To see the mechanism while it is happening. To notice the desire before automatically obeying it. To create a small space between the wanting and the acting. A space where a question becomes possible. Is this actually mine? Not perfect certainty, not absolute truth, just enough distance to look again. Cormac McCarthy captured something about this in a single sentence. Borrowed time, and borrowed world, and borrowed eyes with which to sorrow it. Borrowed eyes. Not borrowed beliefs, not borrowed opinions. Borrowed eyes. A borrowed way of seeing, a borrowed way of measuring, a borrowed way of deciding what matters. And maybe that is the deepest insight of all. Most people never notice the lens. They only see through it. They inherit definitions of success and call them personal goals. They inherit standards and call them ambition. They inherit desires and call them identity. Not because they are foolish, because the borrowing happened before they knew it was happening, long before they had the language to question it, long before they had the awareness to resist it, long before they could choose. And perhaps freedom begins at the exact moment you finally notice that. Not because the influence disappears, but because the spell breaks. For the first time, you can see the desire, instead of only feeling it, and that changes your relationship to it forever. Right now, there is probably something you're pursuing, something important, something that feels worth the effort. Maybe it is a career. Maybe it is a relationship. Maybe it is a version of yourself. Maybe it is a future you've been imagining for years. And maybe it truly belongs to you. Maybe it does. But before you continue chasing it, there is one question worth carrying with you. Not, can I achieve it? Not, will it make me happy? Not even, is it worth it? Just this. When did I start wanting it? And who was there first? The answer might change nothing, or it might change everything. Because sometimes the most important discovery in life is not finding what you want. It's discovering where the wanting came from.